Our poll watchers have no problem with staying 6 feet away. Yet they weren't allowed to do this. So we're going to release that video to you.
I would say this about my own city. It has a reputation for voter fraud. You have a reputation for dead people voting, and we're going to go look at just how many dead people voted here.
And the explanation for this was that they had a software error and that a pipe had burst. And therefore, we can't count votes for 4 hours.
Philadelphia, unfortunately, and I would say this about my own city, has a reputation for voter fraud. You have a reputation for dead people voting, and we're going to go look at just how many dead people voted here. I didn't think we'd have to do that, but we will. And you have a reputation for people being bussed in from Camden voting here. Wouldn't be the first time that happened. But this goes way beyond any of that. And let me also add that this isn't happening just here. We have exactly the same lawsuit in Wisconsin, where exactly the same thing happened. Except in Wisconsin, mysteriously at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, about 120,000 ballots appeared. Oh, here come these ballots. Well, we have no idea if they really are ballots. We have no idea if they're signed, if they're postmarked properly, if it isn't just the same person who submitted 100,000 ballots, and they all got counted. This is the way they intend to win. Now I'm informed by former Congressman Sweeney, who's been going around the country and collecting this information, that similar situation in Arizona, similar situation in Nevada, and a similar situation, what am I missing, John? Where are you? In Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. Again, let me be specific what it is. This whole new thing that never happened before in our country, these mail-in ballots, which has been a cause of real concern for everyone because they can easily be fraudulent. Well, one of the things that the law attaches to that is the right for both parties to observe the ballot. We never got a chance to look at a single one of them. The gentleman here who did this for us says about 100,000 ballots went through that process in the 20-plus hours in which they wasted his time by not allowing him to see a single ballot. Well, that's 120,000 ballots that should just be taken out of the count. So you want to look at that number, that 120,000 should come out. And this is an area in which Biden is getting 60, 70% of the vote. I don't know if this is going on any other place, but it is going on in with enough frequency in Wisconsin that we've brought suit, and now we'll have to look into 3 other places. What it says to me is this is a concerted effort of the crooks that run the Democrat Party. And you know these big city machines are crooked. You know that. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years of one-party rule leads to corruption of all kinds. Voter fraud is one of the biggest because that's how you keep your power. But we're not going to let them get away with it. They're not going to steal this election. This election gets decided by the people. So we are going to continue the lawsuit here. We're going to bring a second one, and then we're going to bring a federal lawsuit. Quite possibly, we'll do a national lawsuit and really expose the corruption of the Democrat Party. But this is beyond anything I've ever seen before. This comes when you think you have so much power and you own the media that you can do anything you want. So I'd like to ask the former Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi, to explain what's been going on at the polling place.
It is about the integrity of this election, and every vote, as Mayor Giuliani said, in every state must be counted fairly. What we have seen, and we have a video of it that we will release to you, they put up, it looks like a police barricade all the way around the perimeter, and they are keeping our poll watchers back approximately 30 feet, at least 30 feet. You can judge for yourselves. They would not let them look any further. There is a gentleman there by the name of Seth Bluestein, who is an assistant to a city commissioner, and he is wearing a badge the size of a baseball. And as far as I know, he's not a sworn law enforcement officer. So it looks like intimidation to me, with a police barricade and a man wearing a huge badge around his neck. He told them they can't come any closer. He said the reason was because of they can't interfere with the process, and then something about COVID. Well, we all know at the polls, you have to stay 6 feet apart. Our poll watchers have no problem with staying 6 feet away. yet they weren't allowed to do this. So we're going to release that video to you because then they also had binoculars. Our poll watchers brought out a pair of binoculars. They were shut down on the binoculars, but then they were told, well, okay, you can use the binoculars. So that's a concession that we are allowed to observe the ballots. Yet clearly when you see how big the room is, you cannot see every ballot. You can only see with the binoculars the ones that are closest to you. So that's a concession by them, and they're still not letting us see this. So we need to fix this. We need to remedy this now because we've won Pennsylvania, and we want every vote to be counted in a fair way. Thank you, and I'd like.
States that stopped counting last night were battleground states where Trump had the lead. So I noticed that states that were deep blue, like Delaware, they managed to count all their votes last night. States that were deep red, like Alabama, they managed to count all their votes last night. Smaller states than the battleground states, like Wyoming, got to count all their votes. New Hampshire got to count all their votes. Bigger states like California and New York got to count all their votes. And Texas got to count all their votes. So why is it that the only people that stopped counting are in the 3 or 4 states that are going to determine whether or not Donald Trump wins this election? Second thing, Josh, we find out, for example, like last night while we were watching the election results come in live, there was a 4-hour delay from the results from Georgia, from Cobb County, where I believe that's where Atlanta is. And the explanation for this was that they had a software error and that a pipe had burst. And therefore, we can't count votes for 4 hours. So I find that extremely suspicious. The first thing I want to see is I want to see a photograph of that voting collection room an inch deep in water. And if everybody has a phone there should be no problem whatsoever. I want to see the photographic evidence that there was a water leak that caused that vote to be delayed, because I think it was delayed because they had some calculating to do. And we're seeing it all across the board. We're seeing ballots showing up for Joe Biden that are 100% Joe Biden. We saw this in the election, I want to say it was 2008 with Al Franken in Minnesota, where he was down by several hundred votes, and they kept counting, and votes kept appearing. And Josh, this was 200 votes in this particular case. Somebody showed up with 200 votes, an election that is so close that it is so close to 50-50 that 100 votes or 50 votes is going to make the difference. And they came in with this box of ballots, and every one of the 200 votes was for Al Franken. And a statistician said the chance of that happening in any election, forget a 50-50 election, is precisely 0. There is absolutely 0 mathematical chance that could have happened on its own. And we're seeing the whole thing going on right now. You can argue about whether ballots are faked or not, but Donald Trump came out and made the point that was indisputable. We were winning by 700,000 votes here, 400,000 votes here, and so on. And then they stopped counting. Why? And then all of a sudden, everything just stopped. Why? That's a good question. How is a better question. But it does not strike me as possible in the realm of coincidence that the only states that stopped counting last night were the battleground states, and that red states, blue states, larger states, and smaller states all got their counting done on time. And the only ones that had to stop were the 3 or 4 states that Donald Trump needed to beat Joe Biden in. This doesn't pass any kind of a common sense test. There's no rational explanation for it other than the obvious explanation for it. I'd be even willing to accept that one state somehow managed to ball things up so badly that they couldn't get their results out and they had to stop counting. And I'd even be willing to go so far as to say that could account for maybe even one of the battleground states. But all of them, no, not a chance. 0 chance.